Hard work didn't stop mattering because people got lazy. It stopped mattering because it became expensive. That sentence makes people uncomfortable, but it explains more about modern careers than most advice ever will. For most of the 20th century, hard work created leverage because replacing it was difficult. Knowledge lived in people's heads. Processes were informal. Experience accumulated slowly. If someone understood the system, the clients, and the edge cases, they were hard to replace. Effort compounded into security. That world no longer exists. Today, hard work is easier to standardize, easier to monitor, and easier to substitute. Processes are documented. Knowledge is externalized. Technology lowers switching costs, which means effort itself stopped being scarce. Scarcity moved. It moved to things like decision-making authority, narrative control, and optionality. It moved closer to where risk is owned, not where tasks are executed. This is why so many people feel like they're doing everything right and still going nowhere. They're optimizing for effort in a system that optimizes for flexibility. From the organization's point of view, this isn't cruel, it's rational. Organizations want to reduce dependency on individuals. They want roles to be interchangeable. They want the ability to scale up and down quickly, and in that logic, hard work becomes a cost, not leverage. That's why the advice people still repeat sounds morally correct, but practically ineffective. Work harder, go above and beyond, be reliable. None of that is wrong, it's just incomplete. Hard work still matters, but only after it's attached to something scarce. Visibility, judgment, ownership, context that can't be easily replicated. Most people were never taught this. They were taught effort would be enough. So when careers stall, they assume the failure is personal. It isn't. The system moved, and nobody sent a memo. Let's talk about what actually changed. In the 1970s, something fundamental shifted in corporate thinking. Before that, companies operated under what you might call stakeholder capitalism. They balanced the interests of employees, customers, communities, and shareholders. Then, in 1976, an economist named Milton Friedman published an essay arguing that the only responsibility of a corporation is to maximize shareholder value. It sounds academic, but this idea restructured everything. Because once shareholder value became the dominant framework, every other consideration became secondary. Employee development? Only if it immediately impacts the bottom line. Job security? Only if retention costs less than turnover. Loyalty? Only if it's economically efficient. This wasn't a moral shift, it was an economic one, and it completely changed what organizations optimize for. Before this shift, companies invested in long-term employee development because they expected those employees to stay. Training someone for 5 years made sense if they'd be there for 20. After the shift, that math stopped working. Why invest heavily in someone who might leave? Why create dependency on specific individuals when you could build systems that work regardless of who's in the role? The answer became, don't. Instead, focus on making roles as interchangeable as possible. Document everything, standardize processes, reduce the cost of replacing anyone. Which means your hard work, your institutional knowledge, your years of experience, all of that started mattering less than it used to. Not because it wasn't valuable, because it was expensive. And expensive became the problem. Here's where this shows up in ways most people don't connect. You work late. You deliver ahead of schedule. You solve problems before they escalate. You go above and beyond on every project. And your reward is more work at the same level. Not a promotion. Not a significant raise. Just more responsibility within your current scope. Why? Because from your manager's perspective, you're solving a problem. You're reliable, you're executing well, which means there's no urgency to move you. Moving you creates a gap. It introduces risk. It disrupts current operations. So the path of least resistance is to keep you exactly where you are. Your hard work made you too valuable in your current role to promote. This is the trap nobody warns you about. The advice you were given, work hard and you'll get ahead, that advice assumed scarcity of effort. It assumed that if you worked harder than others, you'd be rewarded proportionally. But effort isn't scarce anymore. Competence isn't scarce anymore. What's scarce is leverage, and leverage doesn't come from working harder. It comes from being hard to replace in ways the organization can't easily systematize. Let me be specific about what this looks like. Two people are doing similar work. One works 60 hours a week, executes flawlessly, delivers everything on time, solves every problem that comes up. The other works 40 hours a week, delivers solid work, but they're also visible in. Here's another way this shows up. You've been at your company for 7 years. You know the systems inside and out. You understand the clients, you can navigate the politics. You're the person everyone comes to when something's complicated. That feels like job security, like you've built something valuable, then layoffs come. And your name is on the list. Not because you weren't good, because you were expensive. 7 years means you're at the top of your salary band. You've accumulated raises, you have more benefits. You cost more than someone doing 80% of what you do for 60% of the price. And from a pure cost perspective, you're inefficient. The organization might lose some institutional knowledge when you leave, but that loss is temporary and one time. Your salary cost is permanent and recurring. The math is brutal, but it's not personal. This is why tenure stopped protecting people the way it used to. It's not that organizations don't value experience. It's that they value flexibility and cost efficiency more. And in that calculation, long-tenured employees often lose. Let's talk about what actually creates leverage now. It's not effort. It's not loyalty. It's not even competence in the traditional sense. What creates leverage is being difficult to replace in ways that matter to the organization's current priorities. Notice the specificity there. Current priorities. Not what mattered 5 years ago. Not what might matter in the future. What matters right now. Because organizations are optimizing for the present, not rewarding the past. This is why people who switch companies every few years often advance faster than people who stay. It's not that they're more capable, it's that they reset their value to current market rates every time they move. They're not anchored to their salary from 5 years ago, and they're being evaluated based on what they can do, not what they've been doing. Internal candidates get evaluated against their history. External candidates get evaluated against their potential. That's a massive advantage. Here's what this means practically. If you want your hard work to actually compound into advancement, it needs to be attached to something scarce. Decision-making authority, strategic visibility, ownership of outcomes, not just tasks. Relationships that create optionality, skills that transfer across contexts. Hard work on its own, that's table stakes. Everyone at your level is working hard. What differentiates isn't effort, it's where you direct that effort. Most people direct it toward execution, doing their current job really well. That's necessary. But it's not sufficient, because being really good at your current job doesn't demonstrate readiness for the next job. It demonstrates you're good at the current job. And organizations promote based on perceived readiness for the next level, not excellence at the current level. This is the gap that confuses people. They think, I'm doing excellent work. Why am I not advancing? But the system is asking, do you look like you can handle the next level? Those are different questions, and answering the second question requires doing different work. Work that's more visible, more strategic, more connected to organizational priorities. Work that signals readiness, not just competence. Here's the uncomfortable part. The people who figure this out early often aren't the hardest workers. They're the ones who understood that the game changed. They're not putting in 80-hour weeks grinding on execution. They're working strategically, building visibility, managing up, positioning themselves for opportunities, and they're getting promoted past people who are objectively more competent but less visible. That feels unfair. And in a pure meritocracy, it would be. But organizations aren't pure meritocracies. They're information processing systems under constraint. And in constrained systems, legibility wins. Your work needs to be good, but it also needs to be seen, understood, connected to outcomes that decision makers care about. If it's not, you're creating value that doesn't translate into career capital. You're working hard in a system that's not designed to automatically recognize hard work. Let's be specific about what changed and how work gets evaluated. 30 years ago, your manager probably managed 8 people. They had direct visibility into what you were doing. They understood your contributions because they were close enough to see them. Today, your manager probably manages 15 to 20 people. They're in back-to-back meetings. They're managing up to their own leadership. They're dealing with constant reorganizations and shifting priorities. They don't have time to deeply understand what everyone on their team is doing. So they rely on signals, heuristics, pattern matching, who speaks up in meetings, who gets mentioned by other leaders, who's associated with visible wins, who seems ready for more responsibility. Those signals matter more than the quality of your heads down work, not because your manager doesn't care, because they're operating with limited information and limited time. And in that environment, invisible excellence doesn't register. This is why communication became as important as execution. It's not enough to do good work. You have to make sure the right people know you did good work and understand why it mattered and can easily explain it to others. That's not self-promotion in the obnoxious sense. That's making your value legible to a system that can't automatically see it. Most people were never taught this. They were taught that good work speaks for itself. It doesn't. It never did, really. But it especially doesn't now. So here's what this all means. Hard work still matters. But it's no longer sufficient. What matters now is hard work plus strategic positioning. Hard work plus visibility. Hard work plus leverage. The people who advance aren't necessarily working harder. They're working with clarity about what the system actually rewards. And they've stopped expecting the system to automatically recognize effort. They're making their value visible. They're building relationships that create opportunities. They're positioning themselves for the next level while still delivering at the current level. That's a difficult balance, and most people never figure it out because they're still operating under the assumption that effort will be enough. It won't be. Not anymore. The system moved, and the only way forward is to understand where it moved to.